What if you knew there is no gender argument, that there is only gender ignorance? A lack of gender awareness that has taken humanity 500,000 years to decipher. This is not another gender theory video. This is archaeological evidence of why patriarchy was cosmologically doomed from birth. In the next 23 minutes, I'm going to walk you through the archaeological proof and ancestral evidence that, according to the Dogon, isn't theory, but the very foundation of human theology. My name is Tammy Taylor, and I study the suppressed archaeology of matriarchal civilizations. My primary source for this investigation is Shannon Dory, who spent 25 years researching and writing about the African Dogon religion. Her book, The Nummo, The Truth About Human Origins, indicates that because of their isolation on the cliff of the Bandiagra escarpment in Mali, Africa, the Dogon were able to preserve the truth right up until the 1930s. This has not been the case in other areas of the world. The truth has been stamped out by such groups as the Inquisition, the Roman Catholic Church, the early Jewish fathers, and more recently, Islam. The ancient stories told by the Dogon has been passed on from generation to generation throughout the ages. The unique structure of this religion reveals that it was created in an oral culture. The Dogon talked about alien beings known as Nummo, who came to Earth from another star system. Her work is the Rosetta Stone for decoding and understanding how Dogon cosmology is the basis of human religious thought. Civilization, the root of misogyny, why the psychosis persists, as well as the ancient path the Nummo left for us to heal it. This is not another gender theory video. This is archaeological evidence of why patriarchy was cosmologically doomed from birth. In 1946, the Dogon revelation anthropologist Marcel Griot received from Dogon elder Ogotameli changed everything about what and how we understand religion and the origin of misogyny. What he learned was the masculine principle was never meant to rule, and when it tried to, it created the first cosmological trauma, human rupture, still driving our world today. We're going deep, but pay attention. This explains everything. First, understand the original design. In Dogon cosmology, creation begins with Amma, not a goddess as Amma is used in Hinduism, but Amma, solar, watery, eternal, primordial feminine, the complete source DNA. Notice her signature, twinning. In African cosmology, twin birth signals aligned creation. Anything born alone is considered incomplete. In the beginning, Amma's consciousness sought to manifest life through three divine experiments, each attempting to incarnate the Nummo, nature, into material form so they could walk the earth. The first twin descends in harmony, two beings as one field, amphibious, reciprocal, co-creative, androgynous, immortal spiritual essence. Nummo meaning those two together, the spirit and the form. This is the template. Androgyny is immortality, evolving through remembrance, lifetime after lifetime. This is how creation was supposed to work. Although Nummo were hermaphrodites, they were identified with the divine feminine. The first experiment brought forth from the deep two Nummo beings who mated, producing numerous offspring. Among them appeared a single-sex mortal male who was named the Jackal, one severed from the balanced androgynous essence of true Nummo being. There's a whole backstory about how they rebelled and acted a complete fool, but I digress. This male birth marked the first failure, masculine consciousness as willful disconnection from feminine source, the good, sacred goddess genes. Dogon elder Ogotameli is direct. The creation of the male alone was the sign the original plan failed. In the second experiment, fracture being the male not able to keep it in his pants, rather scales. This time, the Nummo feared the loss of immortality as they proceeded, so this time they tried to heal the disruption by mating the deficient jackal with pure Nummo essence. The coupling birthed 4 twins, the 8 original ancestors. But cosmic rupture continued. Twin 1 and 2 broke experimental boundaries, had an affair, and became pregnant, producing these second-generation single-sex mortal beings. From this premature mating, the pale fox is born, called Urugu, meaning a masculine being severed from reciprocity, the archetype of incompleteness. This masculine wound deepened imbalance as its offspring inherited mortality. In the third experiment, the final attempt at balancing, this time the Nummo withdrew its DNA from the animals, had the 7th ancestor from the second experiment swallow, and then regurgitate the 8th ancestor, which birthed Lebe, the first human, carrier of the divine feminine word, the master, mistress of speech, the divine feminine voice, though flawed, finally incarnate. These failures have been intensified through the ages as the earliest civilizations built by matriarchal societies were inevitably fractured by the same violent subjugation of matriarchal power. I go deep into this on my Substack, The Womb Envy Project. As unilateral creation replaces reciprocal creation, projection replaces reception, control replaces flow, fear replaces wisdom. Let's pause. This is not and has never been about men versus women. This is about the innate imbalance in humanity, a pattern established at our inception, the animalistic mitigation against grounded feminine principles, and the masculine principle, never meant to exist in isolation, yet trying to regulate and rule over what it cannot comprehend alone. According to the often quoted Dogon, this is how humanity began its existence and evolved or devolved, depending on your perspective, through these three ancestral experimental failures. The jackal as first ancestor, Urugu, the pale fox, as second, and Lebe, the master mistress of speech, as third. This is the first of three in a replicating pattern that eventually establishes patriarchy across human civilization. The second paradigm emerges in Kemet. Watch the inversion. Solar femininity becomes solar masculinity. Priestesses distributed across kingdoms and queendoms become centralized priesthoods. Cyclical time becomes linear decree. Reciprocity is repressed into hierarchy. Feminine power isn't yet erased. She's downgraded from sovereign origin to consort. But the third paradigm perfects the overriding, the erasure. Early Christianity was dominated by feminine wisdom. The mummy Isis priesthood, the Sibyls, Black Athena, Sophia, Magdalene, egalitarian assemblies. But empire needs hierarchy, and feminine wisdom becomes source content, yet theological threat. So female leadership is punished and prohibited. It is at this moment misogyny becomes doctrine, when suppressing the feminine becomes sacred law. This cosmological pattern reveals the fundamental wound embedded in human consciousness. The Nummo experimental failures internally divided humans into ego-soul beings instead of the aligned habitation that Amma intended. Twin or ego-soul alignment occurs three ways. Naturally, through the ancient Nummo bloodline, by gaining awareness of one's soul immortality through past life memory, or spiritual initiations through free will choice to harmonize Amma's intent using soul integration methods and daily healing practice. The jackal's creation established the first rupture, masculine essence severed from its feminine source. The pale fox's emergence in the second generation made this disconnection inheritable and mortal. Lebe's birth in the third experiment represents what should have been the healing, divine feminine wisdom finally incarnate in human form. But here's what the cosmologies tell us about human development. We didn't integrate this wisdom. Instead, we continued reproducing the same pattern of masculine disconnection. Just as the jackal was created as a single-sex being removed from the balanced androgynous essence, we see this same single-sex consciousness being normalized in human society to this day. The pale fox inherited mortality, the capacity for further separation. This became the template for how masculine consciousness would develop on Earth, not as the divine masculine in partnership with the feminine, but as the wounded masculine seeking to replicate its own isolation through dominant systems. And Lebe, the mistress of speech, the first human carrier of the divine feminine word, became the template for what happens when feminine wisdom actually incarnates. It becomes the target of conquest, erasure, or co-optation by the very masculine consciousness that needs it to heal. But cycles resolve in restoration. The feminine principle is returning, not as domination, not as reversal, as rebalancing, as remembrance, as coherence. Because misogyny was never the enemy, it was the symptom. This three-experiment pattern, the foundation for every patriarchal system that followed. The jackal's immortal but severed masculine consciousness became the natural order of masculine authority. The pale fox's second-generation mortal masculine became the competitive, anxious masculine that must control the feminine to feel safe. And Lebe's divine feminine wisdom became the knowledge that must be suppressed, contained, or redefined to maintain the masculine-dominated system. When we look at modern misogyny, we're seeing the replay of these three ancient failures. The dismissive attitude toward feminine wisdom, that's the jackal. The aggressive need to control feminine bodies and voices, that's the pale fox. And the constant attempts to redefine, minimize, or eliminate authentic feminine expression, that's the systematic targeting of Lebe. This isn't about individual male choices. This is about collective human consciousness still carrying the cosmological DNA of three failed experiments, unconsciously recreating the same pattern of separation, wounding, and attempted control that began when masculine consciousness first severed itself from its divine feminine source. But Dogon Cosmology doesn't end with three failures. It points toward a fourth possibility. What if the next experiment succeeds? What if masculine consciousness finally learns to integrate instead of control feminine wisdom? What if we decided, you and I, to evolve beyond the jackal's separation, beyond the pale fox's anxiety, to create space for Levi's voice to flourish without conquest? This isn't about reversing masculine and feminine roles or creating a new hierarchy. This is about our soul integration. The Nummo were androgynous, balanced within themselves before manifestation. The fourth experiment would be consciousness that embodies this original balance, neither masculine dominance nor feminine submission, but the sacred reunion that was always meant to be. The cosmological secret about misogyny is that it's not permanent. It's a developmental stage. We've been unconsciously replaying ancient failures, but awareness changes everything. When we recognize these patterns, we can choose differently. We can be the generation that finally completes the fourth experiment, creating the cornerstone foundation of Earth's true golden age. The ancient cosmology holds the key to our liberation. The same divine consciousness that created three failed experiments has been waiting for us to consciously choose the fourth. This isn't about returning to some mythical past. It's about finally fulfilling what those ancient experiments were meant to create. Human consciousness, whole and balanced. Masculine and feminine wisdom reunited. The divine feminine word finally free to speak through human form and walk upon the earth without fear. For those called to explore this journey deeper, to understand not just what we're healing from, but what we're healing toward, join us in the Mother's Throne series, where we map the practical pathways from ancient wounds to cosmic reunion. Because the future of human consciousness depends on our willingness to complete what the cosmologies began. The jackal doesn't have to remain severed. The pale fox doesn't have to remain anxious. And Levi's voice doesn't have to remain silenced. The fourth experiment awaits our conscious participation. These stories are mirrors. What they reveal depends on who is looking. We are not returning to a lost matriarchy. We are dissolving a long imbalance and remembering relational law. The feminine does not rise alone. The masculine does not fall. Both return to coherence.